In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in black and white emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we are coloring conversations on the canvas of America. Tonight, our special guest is Dr. Timothy Felton. Dr. Timothy Felton is a powerhouse of resilience, versatility, and service. A dynamic motivational speaker and community leader, Dr. Felton's journey spans law enforcement, athletics, education, entrepreneurship, and advocacy. He holds a bachelor's, master's, and doctorate degree, each earned through unwavering commitment to lifelong learning and personal growth. A retired law enforcement officer, Dr. Felton served his community with honor and integrity, including impactful work as a juvenile officer, where he mentored at-risk youth and advocated for restorative justice. His passion for mentorship extended to the athletic field, where he coached football and track, shaping young athletes, both physically and mentally. Though he wasn't drafted into the NFL, Dr. Felton participated in professional workouts, a testament to his grit and determination. His drive to succeed is reflected in his diverse pursuits. He's a licensed barber, a published author, and the founder of a nonprofit organization focused on uplifting underserved communities. In education, Dr. Felton has served as a case manager, academic advisor, and currently as a dean of students, roles through which he's empowered countless individuals to unlock their full potential. Dr. Felton credits Coach Perry, Virgil King, and his father as the most influential figures in his understanding of Black history and personal legacy. Their examples of strength, wisdom, and community impact continues to shape his mission to inspire, educate, and elevate. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Timothy Felton.
Yes. Good evening.
Yes, sir, I can hear you. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm great. It's good to have you on the show, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Is there anything you'd like to add to your bio before we get into the show?
No, I think you covered everything pretty much.
Yes, sir. Okay. Well, we'll get into the show, and we'll start with your education and leadership as dean of students. Can you tell us what inspired your transition from law enforcement to educational leadership?
Yeah, for me, like I said, my passionate purpose is working with youth, students, and student athletes. So, like I said, my first goal was to become a deputy juvenile officer, which I did after graduating with my degree in criminal justice. After that, pretty much the transition came with just kind of want to help students as well as student athletes at the higher educational level still, like I said, reach their success and their goals. So my transition pretty much started, from just my passion and purpose, basically. Then once I, became an academic advisor, saw some other opportunities back with K through 12. And so with those opportunities, actually, like I said, applied for the position and ended up getting, like I said, a dean of student position, which also, like I said, works with youth, just more like on a younger stage for us, elementary and middle school students. Primary goal was always to work with youth and work with students and student athletes. So that's pretty much what my focus was when it came down to the transition.
So, can you tell us in that transition from law enforcement to education, was that like a difficult transition for you? How long did it take before everything went smoothly?
No, it wasn't difficult. Like I said, the goal was, like I said, law enforcement. And then after that, I worked with dropout students as well, and with St. Louis County here in St. Louis. So, like I said, it was still within the lines of my passion and purpose in life, with working with those youth students and the student athletes. And then, like I said, ended up going back to school to get my master's degree in human services while I was working actually in a human service role as a case manager with those dropout GED students. So once I finished that, the next goal was to go get my doctorate degree, which I applied for 2 universities here in St. Louis. Got accepted to both, but ended up choosing Missouri Baptist University because they had a higher education leadership program. And the goal for that was just kind of, like I said, first of all, be able to go back into the community and show those students that kind of grew up, like I said, in my area, that not only you can be a professional athlete, but you can also be a professional in life. And so for me, it was the goal to go get the doctorate degree, but also to go back and show those students that you had a student that grew up where you came from. There was a C student from kindergarten throughout undergrad, end up going back to school, get your, like I said, your master's and doctorate degree, and finishing with, a 3.8 and 3.9 in those programs. So the goal was always, like I said, to make sure I go back and give back. Also, like I said, when I graduated from with my undergrad degree in criminal justice, I also started coaching at the same time. So did that for 26 years, 17 at the Boys and Girls Club where I grew up, and then the other years at the high school level and at the college.
So, how do you define your role as a dean of students beyond administrative duties?
It's working with the students, not only as an administrator, but also working with them directly. So, like I said, working in the social service, human services field, one of my strengths is working with students directly, even though it's an administrative role. I was a supervisor also when I worked, with the law enforcement, but I always had that connection to work with those students one-on-one or direct care is what we call it. So for me, the direct care part comes in where, as administrator, yeah, you have administrative roles and duties, but I'm in the trenches along with the teachers, along with those that serve within the building, as line workers. So I'm just not sitting in an office all day, doing paperwork. I'm out in the hallways, doing, the lunch duties. Then a lot of the students, like I said, they come around to me. Like I said, once you connect with a build a relationship, they'll come around to your office, and then you just got to have regular conversations. So that direct care, I think, is the most important because, like I said, it helps build relationships with a lot of us, like I said, students. Like I said, they may not have a father figure, or even the female students that you work with may not have those same figures as well. Most people think of it as like males usually don't have a father figure, but some of the females don't have one as well. So just being able to work with them directly and making sure, that you looking at them holistic. So holistically means I'm not just focused on one aspect. I'm focused on the whole person when I'm working with those students. The direct care, make sure you, like I said, working with them, working with their parents, making sure, their academics, making sure their social skills will come up to par, making sure, they there every day for us, their attendance. And then, like I said, some of them need certain interventions more than others, but make sure you have those interventions and those resources for those students there to connect with them personally first. And then, like I said, outside of it, to help them, like I said, navigate and succeed in their setting, even though it's just elementary or middle school setting, to get them to the high school, college level trade or the workforce in the near future.
So let me ask you this. So does that mean that in that role that you primarily become like you're the overall, you're just the big chief. So are you like the mother, the father, the brother, the sister, the friend, the best friend, the aunt, all of that combined in one? And this is like, when you establish those relationships, it's kind of like, it's like it's more than just an open door policy, but it's the policy that makes the students feel comfortable.
Absolutely. Like I said, and most of the students I work with, you want to have a safe space for students to come. Like I said, I'm not a licensed counselor or a social worker, but I've worked in settings, with those individuals. And even now, like I said, working with a wonderful counselor at the new school where I'm at. But those relationships with those, the counselors and the social workers, we all work hand in hand. Like I said, we have a multi-tier support system team that we have at the current school I was at. We have one at the previous school I was at as well. And what you do is you coming through and you working with three different tiers. So with that, tier one is more so 80 to 85% of your students that you'll be working with, which is, like I said, low level. You get to tier two, you're working with more, probably about 15% of those students are the more sophisticated, or like I said, students that may have different behavior issues, attendance issues, and things like that. So, and then tier three, when you get to that particular tier, you pretty much kind of set up what we call like a care team meeting where you didn't get all the documentation that you need, whether it's the student had, IEP, a 504 plan, if they have, different situations, like I said, outside of the school that they're dealing with, those teams can be formed and those students can get, extra resources and extra help. We have different resources, like I said, within the school, from tutoring to counseling to brief counseling, to different activities after school that we try to keep a lot of the students engaged, not only in school, but also outside of school. We have an entrepreneurship class that the students can sign up for. We have a social media platform that the students can sign up for. And what you're trying to do is trying to engage them in some of the fields that they may go into. We know now, like with YouTube and Instagram and a lot of social media platforms, a lot of the students, they want to be influencers. It was a study I saw last month where they interviewed 30 students and asked them what do they want to be in life, and all 30 of them said a social media influencer. And so those are some of the jobs, along with being a graphic artist, a lot of those jobs that don't really pertain a lot of the 4 year degree education or whatever. I think a lot of those jobs don't be significant. AI is another big, job market that a lot of students, like I said, I think is going to, focus on and get into. So yeah, just basically, like I said, serving as kind of like a guide for them. You know what I mean? Like I said, I won't say too much like the parent because they have their parents or guardians. But like I said, just another support system when they come to school for the students. Like I said, to have a safe space and be comfortable to be able to open up and communicate with staff member that, like I said, kind of understands either where they've been at whatever where they've been, or either, like I said, learn from them and understand the new dynamics that's going on in their lives.
Mm. So, what are the biggest challenges students face today, and how do you address them?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things I know, one thing I had to do is kind of take out the equation how I was raised and take out the equation how education was when I was coming up. It's a little different. Like I said, years ago, they came up with the thing that's called "No Child Left Behind," where it means a child is just going to be passed on from grade to grade to grade, no matter if they obtain or get the information that they need to move to the next grade. When I was growing up, like I said, some kids were held back maybe a year if they wasn't ready. So I think one of the challenges is that a lot of students are being moved forward and they don't really have those skills, academic skills to move forward. They haven't learned the skills to move to the next grade, but just passing on. Good example, like I said, when you growing up, you had reading, writing, and arithmetic. And those three things, if you get that foundation, for each grade, you just kind of add it on to that foundation. I don't think that's happening. A lot of the curriculums that I've seen, like I said, in the K through 12 district where I'm at, that information, even for me, like I said, with a doctorate degree, I would have to go back and really be retaught that information because a lot of the information I think is above, where a lot of our students are at. So I think one of the challenges is kind of getting back to the basics. And like I said, you have to really start um, in kindergarten. We remember going to a training, and in the training, they talked about the most important years is K through 3. So from kindergarten to third grade, uh, pretty much students know if they're gonna go past that, if they're gonna go, like education, go to high school, go to college. So those first few years of your elementary school years are vital and important to learn those basics. So I think that's one of the points that I think a lot of the students issues that they may have are just not, like I said, in the information, being able to retain that information. And if you don't retain that information, you're just being moved on and passed on from grade to grade to grade. So by the time you get into the 7 to 8, like I said, I have a student we just learned he can't read, so we gave him his schedule, and he's having problems getting to class. So you're thinking he's just cutting class or don't know where he's going, but he can't read to get to where he's going. So
Oh, wow.
with those situations, like I said, once you find that out, then like I said, that curriculum that I mentioned, you can start putting those things together for that student to try to give them some resources to help them out. I've given them probably 3 or 4 schedules because I'm just thinking he lost the schedule. So now his schedule has been changed, and then we was able to, like I said, escort him to each one of his classrooms to show him where he needs to be, throughout the day. But yeah, I think the number one thing is just, like I said, the No Child Left Behind, and kids being passed along from grade to grade without, you know, uh, retaining the information that they need to be successful in their grade.
Well, so now you mentioned the difficulties of what looks like some new materials and stuff of that nature. So, is there really some credence to what they say is new math?
I would think so. One of the school districts I work in, I looked at the math book. I just ended up seeing it on the desk, and I opened it up, and it was a fourth grade math book. But that particular math, I can remember having in high school, so like geometry, and I don't think it's a bad thing. Like I said, because some students, like I said, they can, understand the angles and different things like that or whatever. But this particular district I was in, a lot of those students, like I said, they wasn't functioning and operating on a level where they could actually learn that information. And so when I go through that book, I'm saying to myself, like, man, I really understand why a lot of these students, like I said, are not successful in a certain subject because a lot of this information is way above their learning, ability. And it's not to say that they have learning abilities, but like I mentioned earlier, I think it's more so that a lot of the students actually, like I said, hadn't retained a lot of that information just passed from grade to grade to grade. And like I said, if you don't have that foundation to build off, just add, subtract, and multiply, divide, and decimals. A lot of students today, they ask me what time it is, and I'll point up at a clock. And they only can tell time based off of their phone or digital instead of a regular clock. So those types of things that we learn, coming up during the time we went to school, penmanship is another one. Like I said, there's no penmanship. Teaching how to write in cursive. So a lot of those things, and then like I said, making sure that a lot of the students you try to be able to write an essay. Well, if I can't write, it's gonna be hard to write a form. You know what I mean? An essay. I don't understand how to indent. I don't understand that the capitalization. I don't understand, putting a capital letter at the beginning of the sentence, the punctuation. So a lot of those basic things, I think, is not being taught. Like they were when we were coming up. During the time that we were in school. It's unfortunate, but like I said, I also think that the curriculums that they do have is great curriculums, but I think it'll be geared more toward those students that have retained that information that can move from grade to grade.
So, can you tell us, as the dean of students, are any of those things in your under are they in your control where you can actually help to implement some changes with those to make things a little bit simplified or better for kids to understand, or is that one of those long processes that got to run all the way up?
Yeah, it got a long way up because it's like the state sets the standards, and so a lot of times the standards is already set up. I mean, it was set when we were in school as well, but I just think we had a different foundation, of learning. So a lot of those it's state, level where you have certain tests. I only remember taking maybe two tests. You know what I mean? Like the CAT test we had here in Missouri, and we had the I think it was called the best test when we got out the eighth grade. They take the MAP test now here in St. Louis, but it's a lot of other tests that they actually take. But I think all those tests are pretty much geared to see the benchmarks of where those students, what I mean, will actually land. And so to me, it's more like it's a checkbox system instead of the learning system. You know what I mean? Based on what I've seen, uh, it's not something what I mean, that I can help with implementing. But one thing I do is once you recognize those students that may not be, at the level where they are, you can try to help get them the resources that they need to try to help them out in those situations. Whether it's reading, what I mean, whether it's tutoring, or whatever something that you may need. A lot of great teachers are out here, what I mean, teaching. And like I said, it really comes down to those students, along with their parents, what I mean, like I said, buying into the system, the curriculum, and then, like I said, it's a whole team effort when it comes down to it, to try to get those students prepared for the next level of grades.
So, how do you foster a culture of accountability and empowerment in your school?
Yeah, yeah. For me, like I said, I'm in predominantly black school districts, and the two or three that I've worked in, they were the same. But like I said, you still had, what I mean, a diverse group, depending on what school that you have, because some of them you have some sort of like magnet schools and different things like that. So you may have Bosnian, Vietnamese, you may have Africans, you know what I mean? So you may have a diverse population in some of the schools, but majority of them is, probably 98%, African Americans in the school. So, but the culture setting pretty much is set like within the school based on that principal, assistant principals that are at their school. So it just depending on what their focus is, like I said, for their particular school. Um, I can remember thinking back, like the district that I came out of, is one particular school in that district that's in like the top five every year in the nation, right, in academics. So I'm thinking in my mind, why are not the other schools in that same district at the same standard? If the one school can do it, but it is, like I said, a magnet school, it is being recruited. So it's kind of like on a private school level, but I think if every school district, every principal, if you had the same uh, format and unity set up in the school, and like I said, the same teachers in the school, I think you can do a better job with helping the whole district instead of having one or two, schools, what I mean, that actually are prospering and succeeding in academics, but the culture, like I said, is pretty much set. A lot of schools have tradition. Like the high school I graduated from, like I said, we had Arthur Ashe, Tina Turner, Dick Gregory, some of the Tuskegee Airmen. You know what I mean? So we had that culture, we had that tradition. Like I said, two of the guys that I mentioned, like I said, our principal, Burger King, and like I said, my football coach, Richard Perry, they were instrumental, like I said, not only at school, my dad at home, but them at school, they set the foundation. Every morning, the principal would get on the intercom and he tell us it's a proud tradition of excellence since 1875 when the school was born. We had a Hall of Fame wall, so when we walked through the halls going to lunch, we saw those, like I said, professional people that had made it. Not only Arthur Ashe, Tina Turner, and Dick Gregory, those, prestigious type stars, but we saw local senators, governors, teachers, and a lot of the teachers, like Mr. Perry, like I said, you graduated from the school, you go to college, get your education degree, and a lot of them were coming back to the school and what I'll call career teachers. So you invested not only as a student, you went here, you come back and teaching here, and they did that for like 30 years. So that's another difference when we talk about culture as well. A lot of the teachers, like I said, you made, which is a difficult job, and I'll call any teacher that's out there teaching. But at the end of the day, like I said, you have to be committed to the students. You have to buy into, the district where you live. And then, like I said, the culture is basically set, by that district and also those building principles.
What you mentioned something that stuck with me, and that is about the schools not doing the same thing. I want to say it was actually at the top of the month. Today is the 9th. So it was the first show of September. We had Mr. Troy Long on the show. And he actually is one of those people that's working in the system in Jersey, where in his school they are pushing the CTE program, right? To get these kids into these other vehicles of learning, and career development, workforce development. And he had mentioned that same thing to some similarities. I can't quote it directly, but it was like, the program is there for all the schools to use, but not many of the schools are using it, and they're losing the funding. Are you guys having a similar type situation there in St. Louis?
Um, Somewhat, but here in St. Louis, we have kind of like we have the inner city, which is the urban area. So you have a school district within that, and then within that, you also have charter schools that has been big probably for the last 10 or 15 years. And kind of came in because a lot of the district where I came out of, a lot of the schools have closed, due to, like I said, families either moving out of the inner city because of the crime or whatever the case may be. Then we have different pockets of St. Louis counties, right? And within those St. Louis counties, you have some affluent neighborhoods, and then you also had a private school sector. But I think now you have an opportunity, like I said, my sister, older sister, graduated from high school that I graduated from, and you kind of had that legacy going on as the dynamics changed with early 90s, the games and different things were real prevalent in St. Louis City. And a lot of people, like, myself, like I said, you move out of the city, you try to move to a better district or area, or put your kids in private school, during those times. So I think the difference is, like I said, here we have city, county, we have private. A lot of private schools now even have buses that are coming to another district and pick up the students that's supposed to be in the district where they supposed to belong and take them, 25 to 30 miles out, to the private school, which, like I said, there's nothing wrong with that. When I was in high school, we had a desegregation program. My wife was a part of that, staying in the inner city, but you can go to school in one of the better districts in the county. So I think it was a great program. A lot of kids were able to get out, be exposed to a lot of things that you may not have had exposure to. You just in the inner city, but for us, it's always kind of been kind of divided. Here in St. Louis, you have from the city to the county line, the difference in like houses, what they're worth. Like on one side, if you're in the city, your house may be worth 40, $50,000. You cross over one block, you may be in 300,000. You cross over the next 2 or 3 blocks, you may be in $1 million. You know what I mean? So it's kind of divided based on the environment that's set. You know what I mean within that. But when it comes to the school system here, a lot of like I said, parents, like I said, some of them keep their kids in the district where they live, but most of them, like I said, you have those opportunities now, which is great where you can have, someone that lives in the city, but still be able to go to a great school, a private school, or a great school in a different district.
Let me ask you this because I can understand, I guess, what they may be trying to do there, but the whole premise to me, and this is what it looks like to me. So this is my opinion. It seems like they're working on more of the deconstruction
Mhm.
of the public school sector, especially in the urban areas, because they've taken out all the resources. So now, in taking out all the resources, you make the schools bad, you continue to make them bad, and you got people that want to go in to make that difference because you want to save these schools because this is where most likely most of these kids may live. So if they're sending them way across town to some private charter school or to a charter school that really ain't doing much better, but because it's on this particular side of town, it's getting more of the resources that should actually be going to this public school. So can you tell me how does that and what's the actual thinking there in St. Louis? Because it sounds like, and basically it sounds like you guys have the same kind of structures what they have in Baltimore, because Baltimore has two sides. This side of the tracks, and you got the affluent side of the tracks. And so, I mean, when I say that, I don't mean that to be humorous, but that's kind of like what it's structured like.
Right.
So my thing is, for you, especially being dean of students, I mean, have you noticed how that works, and have you had any input into those kind of situations?
Yeah, like I said, the district that I came through from K through 12 is diminished a whole lot. Like I said, a lot of schools have been closed. We've had several superintendents to come in, and I think some of them, like I said, it's not a goal to too much change the system. I think some of them come in because, like I said, they pay well. You make
Mhm.
225, 250,000 to be a superintendent to come in. You know what I mean? It's impressive. You know what I mean on your resume, but the whole dynamics of the district, you know what I mean, it's not really receiving those resources that they truly need. And then, like I said, you go outside of St. Louis City, and like I said, you see some of the other districts. What are they doing? Now, that's a great school. Like I said, one of the schools I mentioned earlier that ranks in the top 5 every year nationally when
Mhm.
they do the school rankings is
Mhm.
in the district that I grew up in. You know what I mean? But that's why I was saying that the model that's set for that one school should be the model set for all of them. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, like I said, I don't. A lot of that is still state. You know what I mean? Like I can go into a school and whatever school I go into, I'm on a leadership team and I can have impact with that particular school.
Mhm.
That I'm at. You can go to the board meetings. I think it's real good in every district where you have the parents and community that can come out, and that can be probably the starting point for most of the districts because a lot of stuff actually get done because especially those families and parents that live in that community, they paying the taxes in that community. So
Oh my
they
God.
should be the ones, making, like I said,
That's
decide that,
benefiting.
yeah, this should be benefiting. But I think that's one of the districts, like I said, that I worked at. They had a great, and the one I work in now has great community resources, right? And like I said, the board, they invite you out. Um, Great board members, you know what I mean, that works on a lot of the boards. Some of the boards have uh, former students that are now working, like I said, on the board, they have other jobs. But a lot of the districts, the one I'm at now and the one I came from also had input from students. So you have a student actually on the board, and that student is able to come to those meetings because they're living the lived experience within the school. They know the culture of the school, so they can come to a meeting and say, I'll give you an example. One of the uh, students that was on the board, that's a 12th grade now in the district I'm in, come to the meeting and they say, hey, last year or 2 years ago, our, our food is horrible. Speak to the superintendent because you're at the board. Now the superintendent comes in and say, hey, we're gonna, do some bids for some new food service. And now the food is excellent. You know what I mean? But if you don't have that advocate as that student that's they're eating the food every day to come to the board, meaning that you have them on the board, you don't have their voice. So I think those are important things when it comes to the change within the school districts. You have to have community input. You need those students with voices to also be on the board and be able to speak to some of the things, to those people. Because a lot of times you're in a higher position and your focus is just that higher position. For me, like I said, I don't only focus on administration. I'm on the line working just like I'm a teacher, just like I'm a safety officer, just like I'm a counselor or anything else. I'm on that line. Go a step beyond that, just me personally, because I was a former student athlete, any student in the building, but they don't have to be a student athlete, but I just kind of, they draw to me. They come to school, they have a jersey on. I'm asking them, when your next game, I'm trying to find a schedule. So it goes beyond that scope where I'm outside of not only, working with you in the school, but I'm also supporting. Whether you're in the band, whether you're on the debate team, So I think you need that type of input from a lot of the staff instead of just, like I said, going to work, getting your paycheck, and then you going home. When you go to work, make sure you have an impact, a safe space, making sure you building trust, building those relationships with those students. And then outside of that, also, you show support. Not that I go to every game or every activity event, but those that I work with, I try to make it, known that, hey, I'm here to support you. And a lot of times those students are shocked. I'm pretty sure somebody told them in their life, I'm gonna be there for you. And they weren't there for you. So when you show up, it helps them, like I said, in their development and they understand it's somebody that really cares about me outside of my parent or guardian or relative. So I think those things are important when it comes to any type of change within district.
Well, I'll tell you like this: you are a hero. I'm gonna tell you that. But we definitely. I can tell you right now. I'm gonna go through with. I'm gonna move on to another segment here, but we're definitely gonna have to have you back because we're gonna have to get more in depth into that because what you're mentioning is some things that's happening all over the country in the worst kind of way that's actually affecting the kids that look like you and I in the worst way. Despite how they try to dress the pig up and put lipstick on it, it's still a pig. It's still a pig. And they can never make that right.
Right.
And see, I just think how they're doing with the resources, and you say how people are paying these taxes. You paying your taxes for the school where you at, but they're saying your school ain't no good, and you got to send your child like a whole hour away.
Mhm.
So they got to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get to school by 8. They get out of school at 5 and they get home at like 7 or 8 o'clock at night. That's ridiculous. That doesn't even make sense. And the reason why it doesn't make sense, especially where you are, is because you guys have one of the largest media markets in this country. I mean, one of the largest. Actually, I think it's third behind New York and California, but it may be behind Texas. I'm not sure. I know that it's up there. And you guys have more exposure than most states and people wish that they could get. And you're right there in the heart of what they call America, right in the Midwest. So it doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't get any sweeter than that. I mean, everything is at your leisure and it should be pleasurable, but they're making it horrible for some.
Great.
Let's transition over to your authorship and storytelling. What motivated you to write your first book?
The first one was Undrafted, and it's basically a memoir of like my athletic journey, probably from like age 6 throughout, like I said, my athletic career. And like I said, the inspiration kind of came. I mean, I had talked with people before about, a book or whatever it could be. And then I had a friend, Tyrone Smith, one of my friends, he played for the San Francisco 49ers. And he had a book that he was bringing out and kind of inspired me in that sense. And just to talk with people, like I said, in the community, at work, they would always say, hey, you write a book. The first one was they thought I was going to write a marriage book, which, like I said, later me and my wife ended up writing one and doing a journal for another one. But the Undrafted was inspired based on me just going back through my journey as an athlete, starting at the age of 7, understanding that I can run fast. So at 7, I could beat 10-year-olds. So I recognized it was kind of one of the first gifts that I recognized. So my older sister, a couple of cousins got me into the Boys and Girls Club, playing football. And from there, like I said, played from 7 to 13, went to high school. In high school, like I said, a pivotal moment was probably after my freshman year. A lot of the districts had started where you needed a 2.0, which is all C's basically GPA to play. And I was almost ineligible. When I got my last report card, I had a 2.0 on the nose. But at that time, I decided to make a pivot and decide, athletically as well as academically, I'm gonna change some things, set some goals. So the goal athletically was going into my sophomore year, I was gonna make varsity, and then going academic wise, I was gonna bring my grades up, which I did both. And even with the academic component, making sure that I got a high enough GPA where my counselor, Miss Lewis, she wanted to put me in college prep, but I was kind of afraid because the college prep teachers at that time, it wasn't not that I was trying to get over, but it was serious in college prep. But looking back, which I wish I'd have went through that component of it and learned everything I needed. I went into the college prep program, but I didn't because later on, like I said, I ended up only getting a 13 on the ACT. A lot of the scouts and students that were recruiting me, those fell off. Where I came down to really had no offers. I had signed up to go to the military, to the Marines, and late in my senior year, College and University was starting a new football team here in the St. Louis area, and they called our coach. And, he gave some players' names. I recruited some more players, and I went up there and, we played football. But that book was pretty much, went through that part, went to college, had a pretty good college career. Like I said, worked out personal workouts for Indianapolis Colts and the Cleveland Browns, but didn't get drafted, but still knew that, my identity wasn't just as a football player, that I played football and that I could be a professional without being a professional athlete. So I knew that early on. It wasn't a goal to make it to the NFL. It's just because of your career, you had some notice. You was able to, have those workouts. Didn't get drafted. So in the book, kind of takes you through that night of the draft, the last round of the draft, not getting drafted. Uh, so that book is kind of a memoir that walks you through, my athletic career and some of the challenges that I went through, my purpose. Like I said, I had a sister die in an automobile accident like when I was 6. You know what I mean? So that kind of formed my purpose the next year. Like I said, just figuring out that I can run fast. You know what I mean, and stuff like that. So just that book kind of goes with the purpose and plan that was set early. You know what I mean? Like one of the gifts that I had. That's how the undrafted really pretty much came about. Had a friend that was writing a book kind of similar, and people just kind of asked it, you know what I mean, for me to write
So, how do you balance vulnerability and strength in your writing?
a book. For me, like I said, I usually start with a title. So with the title, that I start with, and then I kind of go through and frame the outline. You know what I mean? Kind of like you used to do with a term paper, right? And from that, you're putting in bullet points and different things like that. In your mind, you're thinking, some of the things that you're gonna write down. So what vulnerability for me is I'm pretty much transparent, even with working with the youth and the students. For me to be transparent, to tell somebody, hey, my parents dropped out, right? In the 8th and 10th grade. They was from Mississippi and Arkansas because they had to help work, right? So education wasn't really their main thing. So by the time, like I said, I got to the 9th grade, I already superseded my dad in education. I got to the 11th grade, I superseded my mom. You know what I mean? So just being vulnerable and transparent, just letting them know your journey, your story. And for me, it's about helping those along the way that may go down that path. Some of them may not. Some people, like I said, but I tell people I got a 13 on ACT. I mean, they just be laugh. They still laugh to this day. I have a granddaughter just took ACT at the end of her freshman year, and she got a 20 just on the first time. You know what I mean? So I'm like, I took that in the 12th grade. You know what I'm saying? And got a 13 on there. But like I said, still went on in life, did some successful things to become a doctor and all that type of stuff. So my vulnerability in writing, I'm real transparent. So a lot of times it's not like a tell-all book that I'm doing, but I put a lot of information in the stories that I think is would be helpful to those that take that path. You know what I mean? For that particular book.
So, what's the hardest truth you had to share in your book?
Um, well, starting off, I think the hardest truth. Because like I said, I'm pretty transparent. And they're not really hard because what I'm thinking of is helping someone else. But I guess the hardest truth. But it wouldn't be a hardest truth. I guess it would be more so. So the incident in the undrafted where I take them through, our family, traveling to Mississippi. It's a rainy night. You know what I mean? Thunder and lightning. Me and my sisters in the back seat fall asleep. Then I wake up based on thunder, right? Waking up crying. And at that time, the old school called you had bucket seats. So I'm crying to come up front with my mom and dad to sit up there. And my mom initially like, no, steady crying. She let me come up there. And then we was hit by an RV, right? So we hit in the back by RV. One of my sisters passed away, from that particular accident. So that story there was probably not vulnerable, but hard because you just kind of reliving that situation. Another one that I put in the undrafted in the later chapters, I had a niece that went to a summer camp and drowned. And so just kind of, reliving that situation when you get the call, when you get up there, seeing my niece laying on, the table, she's gone. You know what I mean? So I think those types of stories are the hardest one, but not, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think those are like the hardest two that I can think
So, what's next for you as an author?
of. Like I said, right now, since 2000, I've written 15 books, three with my wife. So we have one, The Marriage Game Plan. Me and my wife, we've been married for 31 years. Uh, and we have another one called Date Your Mate. This is a journal because we still date, you know what I mean, even after 31 years. One person even told me, my wife, we were professional daters, you know what I mean, because our kids are grown and gone. We have grandkids and different things like that, but it's just me and her. And then another one was Is There a Doctor in the Household? Not only myself, I'm a doctor, my wife also is a doctor, hers in like healthcare administration. And so we wrote one that's called Is There a Doctor in the House? To kind of show the differences of kids. It's a children's book that kind of shows different types of doctors that you can be. So those, like I said, right now, I think I've written most of the ones that are long books. So this summer, I've written three children's books, right? So I think right now I'm on the children's book path. I have maybe three more that I'm, like I said, working on right now. So like right now, it's the children's books right now. So I formulate a thought. Those are short. I have an illustrator through a company that does a great job to do the illustrations. I give them the information. So, for us, an author, I think just continuing to work on the next three children books that I actually have. Is the goal.
Okay. So, let's transition to your work in juvenile justice and law enforcement.
Mhm.
What drew you to work with juveniles during your law enforcement career?
Yeah. So I'm gonna take you back. So just say around the age of 6 or 7, my first job I wanted to do was to be a plumber, right? So we had a plumber come by the house, plumber fixed the pipes. I was kind of watching, and so I, picked up on not knowing at that age that that was a trade. You know what I mean? So we would have career days, and most career days back when I was coming up, they invited doctors, lawyers, police, firemen, engineers, lawyers, and none of those really, resonated with me. It resonated with me because I saw somebody doing hands-on work, a trade, and I kept that until high school. At the high school, was a student athlete, was in journalism, started writing for the school sports news page, and then when I went into college, that's when I went to major my freshman year. Got to the sophomore year, got into a literature class, and the professor was talking like Shakespeare. And then I had like 5 or 6 more classes with this professor. And I said, "Yeah, I can't do that. I just want to be, a sports writer. I want to get in the games for free. Once my career is over." But then I thought back and I said, I went through the catalog and criminal justice, in between criminal justice and education. So I'm reading both, and then it dawned on me with the criminal justice. I had a friend, um, Rudy, that had a juvenile officer, and he was around 13 or 14. Got into some trouble. I remember going to the office with him and saw how his juvenile officer, worked with him. He ended up getting out of trouble. So that story came back to me when I was looking through the catalog for criminal justice, and then just reading a little bit more, saying, "Oh, you don't just have to be a police, you can be a juvenile officer." So that's kind of what sparked my interest. I changed my major from journalism to criminal justice with the goal of becoming a deputy juvenile officer, which I did, and I, like I said, retired from. But that was kind of the spark that I needed, you know what I mean? But then I'm finding out later that, like I said, my passion and purpose is to use student athletes. So while I was in college, I would work. We had, in our law enforcement department, we had, it was a facility. They had one called Cottonwood, that work with kind of like a group home type kids work there. And then we had one that's kind of like the Division of Youth. So I was just working those jobs, just trying to build my resume for when I get out. If I come home in the summer, I work for the Division of Recreation, working with youth doing the summer camps. And then, like I said, my senior year, I had to do like an internship with like promoted roles. So I had all that information to build a resume. I would every summer I would come home and I would go up into the courts uh, where I wanted to work, and I would just get information, and they would give me information and show me how much they make, what the job description were. And so when I got out of school, I applied for the family court in St. Louis City. I worked in a group home for about 3 months. They called and I ended up getting a position, and like I said, working with juveniles for until I retired. So that's kind of how I got into, like I said, the criminal justice field. Which for me, most people think it was stressful, but it was part of purpose. The time that I was there and those youth that I served, and even some now. Like when I started, I was 23. The oldest kid may have been 16, so about 7 years older now. So some of them that are still alive now that you communicate and see, they're in their late 40s. We only 7 years apart. You know what I mean? So it's
Wow.
just to see that impact that you had on those, because like I said, in that particular field, we did go through a whole lot of, visitation, roles and different things like that. Kids going to jail, writing you saying, hey, what you told me was right, but it just went down the wrong path. You know what I mean? But I see some of them now, couple of schools I worked at. Some of the kids that I have, their kids are at that particular school. You know what I mean? And some of them remember me. I don't remember. I remember faces, but I don't remember everybody's name. So that's the rewarding part. Some of them went with like I said, our daughters. When they were in high school, I would see them at like parent teacher conference. And be like, man, you had an impact. You know what I mean on some of the lives. You know what I mean that you worked with. But yeah, the criminal justice thing came back basically just thinking back of a juvenile officer helping my friend when he was about 13, 14. Um, kind of wanted to do the same thing for those juvenile offenders. I started
So, how did you build trust with young people in the justice system?
yeah, so me and one of my coworkers, Karen Coleman, so we wrote the book Black Boys Matter. So we worked there. So the trust basically was built. So we worked on units when I first got there. And then you was kind of like a correctional officer for juveniles. I think my first 5 years I did that. Then I became a supervisor of the juvenile detention or moved to deputy juvenile officer position. So in there, like me and like I said, we both worked on Unit G. Unit G was the unit where the younger boys were held. And so we worked there, but we also worked in missions at times. So missions, you come in from police bring you in, they bring you through the booking or the intake unit. They come from there to admission. So that's our first line of contact with a lot of the students when you get to admission. So somebody coming in, I'm trying to make them feel comfortable, take them through the process. You know what I mean? Because whether people think it or not, that a lot of these kids that come through, they just not cold criminals. Some of them, like I said, being persuaded, to do things because they were friends. Some of them, like I said, may have to go out and steal or do whatever they need to be to try to help at home. So when they come in, my connection has always been the same: build trust, try to build those relationships, and then when you get to the unit, it's just like being in a prison. So you there, you have maybe 20 young men that two staff is working with them. So for me and Mr. Coleman, we had different styles or whatever, and both of those styles were needed when we worked with those juveniles. Me, I have more of a humorous side of me. So a lot of the information that I give to them, if they give me something crazy, I got some hilarious, crazy to kind of counter them. But you still get the point. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, but the building a relationship, that's always been, number one. Even though they know they've been locked up or something, I looked at every uh, offender that came through there is you you ain't been locked up. You know what I mean? For me, it was kind of like you just in a place in a group home almost. You know what I mean? Even though, like I said, some charges were more serious than others, but for me, it's always been to build that relationship, to make sure you build trust, always being transparent with those students. A lot of times you break down a lot of those walls, and then just also being an active listener. So a lot of time, just listening to what they're saying. You know what I mean? Listening to their family dynamics outside of their record. You know what I mean? Really getting to know them and working with them, holistically. You know what I mean? Not only just as an offender, but like I said, we had school within there, so they got educated, while they were in there. So yeah, for me, it's always been to build a trust and be transparent.
What systemic changes do you believe are needed in the juvenile justice?
I think when I was there, we had so like the judges was the key when I was there. So I mean, I went through maybe 5 or 6 judges. 'Cause what they do is they rotate the judges from the adult system to the juvenile. So they rotate them in and out. And I can remember one judge that came through, Judge Edwards. He was, like I said, African American judge, graduated from the same district I was from. You know what I mean? So he had an understanding. He even started an alternative school within the district to try to help those juvenile offenders or those that get put out of traditional school, which the school is still, running to this day. But I think the judges is the key because he came in and he looked at every dynamic, right? So if it was disproportionate, because like I said, you may have had 95%, no, maybe 98% of the offenders in there were, you know, African American boys and girls. So he came in and looked at the disproportionate part of it, the systemic part of it, and he changed some of the system points of it, which came with points and different things like that, which I think it shook up, the system a little bit down there, but it was needed because how the stuff was set up, um, it wasn't totally fair to everybody. So he made it fair to everybody. We had a great supervisor that worked there. So just say a police officer bring a kid in, the kid is stuffed up, or beat up, or whatever the case may be, they would make that officer, like I said, take those kids to the hospital to get a report. You know what I mean? So I think the judges and the supervisors, like I said, play a key part in that systemic portion, like when it comes to the juvenile justice system. Once all that stuff was set up, the judge had diversion programs. He made sure a lot of those students, juvenile offenders, wasn't kept in the facility for long periods of time. So basically, you made it, kind of like more like a group home setting. Because once again, we had trainings that showed us that, um, just locking the kid up, locking them up, the percentages, it wasn't deterring them from being locked up. So you needed diversity programs, you needed different resources. He started a community neighborhood program where some of the workers went out into the communities and they worked within the communities in some of the diversity programs, connecting them with resources in the community, whether it was churches, whether it was community centers, recreational centers. So those diversity programs help out. So you were just housing juvenile offenders like they were prisoners. So I think the judges and the supervisors at those type of facilities are crucial when it comes to changing the systemic, factors within those facilities.
So, how did your experience as a juvenile officer shape your views on rehabilitation?
Um, for me, it was hard. Like I said, I knew I had a job to do. Like I said, me coming in, even as a juvenile officer, when a case came in, I treated it like I treated when it was, when I worked in the detention center. Um, yes, I know what the charge is, but we're gonna start fresh. My goal here as a juvenile officer, when I decided to be a juvenile officer, it wasn't to be punitive. It's really to be provided help for those that come through this system. So for me, like I said, once again, you got to try to build relationships, dealing with your parents, making sure that they understand the dynamics of the court. And so I make sure I didn't sugarcoat anything. If a kid could be locked up for certain things, I will let you know. If a kid couldn't be locked up for a certain thing, I'm gonna let you know. So I wasn't gonna sugarcoat stuff. I wasn't gonna lie to you. I was always gonna be transparent. I'm always gonna give you all the answers to the test because as a juvenile officer, it's certain conditions that you have to follow. And with the rehabilitation part, it's almost just like the prison system. I didn't like it based on if you give even a prisoner or a juvenile offender to say they get out on probation, you can't give them 7 to 10 things to do, right? So you got to get a job, you got to go to school. Not like saying a juvenile offender, yeah, you have to go to school to a certain age, right? So I understand that. But get a job, check in with me 4 times. Like you giving them too much when it comes to the rehabilitation part is not there. So maybe you're doing a checklist or trying to meet certain benchmark for this person to reach. And a lot of time, if you have a real offender, they out here used to doing whether they selling drugs, whether they in gangs, they activities a lot of times is so far gone when you try to get them to conform to an order or a system, they already been outside the system for so long. So I think what was needed more so was like the judge came in and did those diversity programs that helped out a lot. We had night watch where somebody, can go by and check on you for like a curfew. We had a GPS system, I think, which is kind of like more so like almost like a house monitoring arrest. We had a phone system that we can call and make sure, those type of programs, they was helping a lot more because when you got somebody doing 6 or 7 things that ain't used to doing 6 or 7 things, there's really no rehabilitation when it comes to that. I remember one story I can share with you that I remember a young man would always have a backpack, right? You come to see him, and in his backpack, he has probably 5 or 6 t-shirts of different colors. I'm like, what's the deal with you with all these t-shirts? Hey, I got to come through 5 gang neighborhoods. And each neighborhood I get to, I got to change.
Wow.
So I'm
That's
like, it's a lot. So I'm like, from that system part, I can change that because instead of you coming to see me, I can do a home visit, I can do a school visit, I can do a community visit. We can meet at McDonald's. You know what I mean? So I can my supervisor and change it because you have a kid that you really putting in danger trying to come see you in a system that's set up really not to really rehabilitate. You see what I'm saying? So those types of things, and a lot of it, like I said, stories or whatever, like some men, Karen Coleman in our book, Black Boys Matter, we kind of share that information, how the system, the day-to-day system operations, how it's set up through there, going to the educational piece, where a lot of, like I said, our Black boys are labeled, you know, early on as early as preschool and kindergarten as being more aggressive behavior issues. But a lot of times, what it is just that particular boy within that age group, they just doing what natural kindergarten, first, second, or third graders are doing, right? At that time. It's not about being aggressive, like I said, it's about maybe burning off energy. They have a lot of energy at that time. But if you go into the school and you have different people who understand that they're trying to label those kids, you know what I mean, and put them in special ed and different things like that,
Give them
having
some
them,
Ritalin.
you say what?
Give them some Ritalin.
Yeah, medication and different things like that. A lot of times that ain't the case. It's just like now with working in the middle school sector, 7 and 8 grader, 6, 7, 8 grader, they're not elementary,
Mhm.
they're not high school. They're in the middle. They try to find their way. They're in between. But however they act, they should be acting like that in six,
Mhm.
7, 8. You know what I mean? Those is certain behaviors in each group. It's like 2 to 5, those are toddlers. You
Mhm.
have certain development skills that you need doing as a toddler. As you get older, yeah, you should be matured. But still, like I said, most people brain don't develop until well into their 20s. So it's
Mhm.
always continuing learning pattern. But yeah, so those are just some of the things, like I said, as a juvenile officer, if you have that option, um, I remember kids that came in that use drugs or whatever, right? I would come in, hey, understand you tested positive for marijuana. Let's do this. You know, I can put you in a drug treatment program, inpatient or outpatient. Let's see if you can stop on your own. Because if you can stop on your own, you're not only helping you helping your case, your mom. You know what I mean? You helping help what. And so a lot of kids, I use that approach, and they made it while they're on probation. You can still test them, whatever the case may be. They'll make it. I had kids leave the city, go to a county school. I see them out at a football. He's like, I don't even smoke no more. So it wasn't the program that you're gonna try to send somebody to, which is really not rehabilitating, right? If they can do it within their own will, that's the goal you trying to reach anyway. So I mean, I would use different tactics like that. Like I said, a lot of officers they may have set up programs, but I recognize that it was being kind of set up like you would do, with prisoners that come out. So it wasn't really rehabilitating in there or helping when they get out. So the recidivism rate is huge because now you're right back in there because you're going back to these same neighborhoods and environments where you came from. And like I said, there hasn't been no rehabilitation. You
Mhm.
pretty much just putting demands and programs on them, which those type of offenders, they already try to be slick. You know what I mean? To go outside of that, the system that you have set up for them anyway. It's not going to work.
Right. Let's transition over to athletics and mentorship. What lessons from coaching football and track do you apply to your daily life?
Yeah. For me, like I said, I learned early on, um, even just playing as early as 7, just recognizing, I understood that people had talent no matter what organization that you play for. Understood that as a young age. So a lot of time in the inner city, they'll tell you whether it's coaches or parents or whatever, you gonna beat this particular team because we got this and that. And that. That has nothing to do with it. It has more so to do with your preparation. It has more to do with the coaches that you have, your study, what you learning. So for me, as an athlete, student athlete, I was able to take a lot of stuff that I've learned from my earlier coaches. Like I said, I remember back the Boys and Girls Club Coach Victor, Coach Smith, right? Great examples as coaches. You know what I mean? They were family men. They came out, you got to understand, you volunteering. You're not getting paid at the Boys and Girls Club. You're volunteering. So they did that, set that foundation. When I came out of college, when I came back, I volunteered at the Boys and Girls Club coaching football for 17 years. So that foundation was kind of accolade for my little league coach. Get to high school, like I said, our head coach, Lawrence Walls and Mr. Perry, Richard Perry that I mentioned, dynamic educators. One was a physical education teacher, one was a social studies teacher. Like I said, married families. We was able to spend time when we went to the playoffs, spending nights over their houses before the game. So a lot of that camaraderie that we had, the chemistry that we had, the unity that we had, the things that they taught. I took that into coaching, with a lot of other stuff that I've just learned, going from different coaching clinics and camps and different things like that or whatever. And some of the ideas that I may have had, on my own, without being a head coach, you just implement that into the players. So the positions I coach, like I said, I always try to make sure I'm coaching young men to give them the foundation and the fundamentals, that I had, teaching them how to study, how to watch film, because that's the majority of the game. If you just study and watch film, just like you study in academics to get your grades. That's the majority of the game. Tendencies, alignments, different things. So I take all of that information and I give it to them, and then I coach everybody as a first. We know we have first team, depth choice, second and third. I coach everybody as they was gonna start the game because if the top guy go down, the next one is up. He go down, the next one is up. So all of them need to know what we need to do in the scheme team. Where most coaches is number one receiver, running back, or cornerback. You just focus on him. Everybody else, that's second or third string, that's on the team, they're not getting the same. I'm teaching everybody the same because I want everybody to know their assignment, what they need to do. So I took a lot of things I learned from my, like I said, little league, high school coaches, and even like I said, going into coaching, I had some great coaches. Paul Day, I coached in a private school. We won 2 state championships. Sean Morris, he gave my first high school opportunity to coach in the same district where, like I said, where I played. And then Coach Jason at the college level at Missouri Baptist University gave me the opportunity to reach one of my goals to be a coach for 1 year. So having, like I said, great coaches, great mentors as coaches, as men, I take all of that and then I transfer it over to the student athletes, that I coach.
Um, what's your philosophy on discipline and teamwork?
For discipline, for me, I'm not, like I said, the punitive person. And then, like I said, I think when I went back to K through 12, coming from a law enforcement background, I think a lot of people, when they saw that on my resume, a lot of times I'm gonna get hired based on the position we are being a student position, any behavior management position. But in the interview, I always tell them, it's not about being pure. It's about building those relationships and being transparent with those students, listening, actively listening, making sure I understand how can I help them be successful. So discipline, I've done that. Like I said, as a deputy juvenile officer, you get a case in, you have to investigate that case, you have to go out and do the home visit, you got to have witnesses, you have to do a social investigation report that you present in court as a recommendation, for this particular, offender at the time, and the judge make, the final call after the recommendation. So, for discipline for me, I can, like I said, be firm, but my approach has always been help first. Whether it's in law enforcement, whether I go up in the schools, so a lot of time I think when I'm in an interview with a principal, they see that criminal justice, they see the juvenile officer experience, and they think I'm coming in. But I tell them now there's a lot of training that we do within like restorative practices, restorative justice. A lot of stuff we learn, like I said, through the court as well. So basically, you try to repair the home within the discipline. Now you can have restorative and you can have consequences. well. You know what I mean? That you can attach to it. But most of the time, I've had success. Feel like we talking to a
Mhm.
student, right? My goal is to get you back into this classroom because that's where your academics are at. It's not about you going to in-school suspension, out-of-school suspension. Those things don't happen based on what you do. You know what I mean? It falls within, what is a type one offense, type two offense, tier one, tier three, or whatever the case may be. But my goal has always been with discipline is to first of all use a challenge approach. So with a lot of those students, everybody I work with, I hit you with a positive. The positive thing, you came to school today. The negative thing is that, like I said, you acted out in class. And then I'm gonna close it out with another positive. Hey, you got two A's. Let's go. Let's work in this class and get this C. So it's a challenge approach that I use, and I've used it for 3 decades, and that's pretty much work when working with a lot of the students. Also giving praises, right? Everybody can come to the meeting, an administrative meeting with the kids that have behavior issues, and you can throw out all those. So they know when I come to the meeting, if we talking about a certain student, I'm gonna say, hey, he made it 4 periods a day. It seems small, but it's huge for somebody that has some issues with behavior. He made it 4 periods. Fifth period, he acted out, got put out or whatever. He made it 4 periods. So I'm gonna
Mhm.
praise him for the 4 periods. But I know what's happening in that fifth. And sometimes it ain't even the kids' fault. Sometimes uh, kids are provoked by teachers, staff members, you know what I mean, to act out. You know what I mean? Like I know when I was a juvenile officer, when I would come into the school, the first thing a lot of them teachers would do, they gonna get the talent and all this, they want them locked up. And man, that's not what I'm here for. I'm coming here to check on, see how he's doing with his academics, to see how we can, curb his behavior. You know what I mean? So the discipline part, that's pretty much been my approach. To working with this.
So let's transition over to community engagement and legacy, which would include, when I was asking you about who's most influential people in your life in Black history. Um, can you tell us what does giving back look like in your daily life?
Yeah. Like I said, I mentioned earlier, it started when I came out of college, where one of my friends, Kenneth Cooper, he played running back for us in high school. Him and the other guy, Eric Bales, both are extraordinary men, have their own businesses now. Um, and they gave me a call and said, hey, I want you to coach, you know what I mean, with our team. My goal was to never coach. That wasn't a goal of mine. I was to work with juvenile offenders. But for me, like I said, going back to the Boys and Girls Club where I played, they gave me that opportunity to come. So it started there, just volunteering in sports, something that I love, something that's a passion for me. Um, Moving forward in that, we had Big Brother, Big Sisters here in the St. Louis metropolitan area. Um, I did that. I think 2 or 3 years, and when you have like bigs and little, so the person that's uh, the mentor is considered the big, and then the student or the child is the little. So my little to this day still keep in contact with him. That's another one. His son went to one of the middle schools where I worked as a data student, right? But he's successful now, job, married, kids, and everything like that. So that's another part. I work for Presbyterian Children's facility as a mentor. So I've done some mentor. They created back in 2005 kind of my own organization, which I don't work in now, but it's called the Youth Exposure Sports Foundation. And that was a mentor program where for student athletes to just try to help them through the transition. And that kind of started with Coach Perry. I was mentioning earlier, with having me come in and speak with the student athletes and students that are in his class and come back on college breaks and stuff like that. So been doing that, giving back in that way, going into the schools, speaking at different conferences and different things like that or whatever. Currently, like I said, I get like you reached out through LinkedIn and connecting. One thing I do that I think is important that a lot of people should do when somebody reach out, I always respond, even if I don't agree to do it. I always respond, and if I have to respectfully decline whatever I do that or whatever. But a lot of times, those relationships you just not understand how important those are, and also helping. You know what I mean? That particular podcast or everything. For me, I don't really care about the light being. You know what I mean? I don't care about none of that. You know what I mean? But if I got some information somebody want me to share that can be a help on light to people, that's what I do. So, like I said, I don't do mentoring too much more. Now I don't coach anymore. Retire from going forward. So basically, like I said, work, dating a student, me and my wife travel, date. You know what I mean? We have our grandkids. Like I said, off and on to do different things with them, or whatever. But don't do a lot of mentoring. But like I said, community engagement component of it is still me. Like I said, going into the schools, speaking with kids on certain issues and different things. Like so, a lot of my books, I think, draw people to, like I said, to me, and then from that, like I said, I even do, like I said, a podcast. So this is for me, I guess, would be like the giving back. You know what I mean? 'Cause like I said, you do a podcast. I ain't looking to get paid or anything like that. I've done um, stuff in, like I said, Washington D.C. and different places. Like, all that stuff is free of charge. You know what I mean? I always offer. Got people like, you got 15 book. I always offer any help, suggestions, free of charge. If somebody want to, write a book, because I tell people there's a book inside of everybody. There's a story inside everybody. So it's just a matter of, do you want to bring that out? I help with outline. Everything I do with that is free. Somebody said, you could be a consultant. I don't want to be no consultant. I work, job, you know what I mean? Like, and everything is, to me, is not about finance, about money. So I think that's with me, with helping people. I've helped people, I've been a dissertation chair member, and I just helped probably 5 or 6 people through their process of, their dissertation, helping them through that, helping probably another 6 or 7 people with books. So I think that would be, doing podcasts and different things. I think that would be more of my uh, community engagement now. And I just really didn't realize it until you asked the question, and I just started talking and thinking of some of the stuff that I do. Like I said, I don't do the mentoring, or the coaching, volunteering, like I used to. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing, just being able to connect with people. Love, like I said, you meet people. You know what I mean? I always respond. I don't care if it's a financial advisor trying to get you, you know what I mean? And, I just tell, hey, I got investment, you know what I mean? I got, you know what I mean? But like I said, a lot of times it just, I know a lot of people don't reach out or or don't respond, you know what I mean? I make it my duty to respond to everybody that inbox me, you know what I mean, about any bid. And if I can help them, I'll help them. I've helped people, got on a call with a lot of people that have business and organization, non-profits, and they like, you have any? I said, I have 5 people or 10 people that I can do a warm handoff. I can just give you the information. I'm gonna text them, email them, and say, hey, Mr. Felton, not to say that you're gonna get this from them or anything, but yeah, if I know people, like I said, I'll get that information. So then a lot of people they see, contacts, connections, and I know a lot of people, and just been, fortunate. Like superintendents, I know the general manager for the Jacksonville Jaguars. We coach together. You know what I mean? I have Howard Williams, one of our former running backs, is the Rams starting. You know what I mean? So people see those types of things, but I have to tell some of the people like I know people, but I don't know people. You know what I mean? Like I either work with them, you know what I mean, and won't be a guarantee that you know what I mean that you better render their service or help your business. But I'm a person of help. I mean, I like to help people, so I think that's kind of my where I give back now in my volunteer portion that I do.
What does Black excellence mean to you?
Yeah, going back to high school, Virgil King, our principal. For me, it started there. Our high school, Sumner High School, Charles Sumner High School, was the first Black high school west of the Mississippi, right? So, uh, just going there, watching my sister, first of all, she used to take me to a lot of football games. We had great football team from the 70s to probably the mid 90s. Like I said, state championship, runner ups, you know what I mean, district title, you know what I mean? Like it was the place to go, right? It was almost like a Alabama for high school, right? So um, the tradition started there. When I mentioned earlier, where he talked about every morning, anybody that graduated from high school or went there, if you didn't graduate and you've been there one day, you're gonna remember there's a proud tradition of excellence. It's instilled in you. You know what I mean? And that's where it started with me. That Hall of Fame wall that I mentioned, walking by to the lunchroom every day, seeing you know what I mean, seeing greatness. Um, people coming back, speaking. You know what I mean? That graduated from there. And so for me, like today, the Black excellence for me is to making sure you do everything in a spirit of excellence, right? So everything attached to me, I try to do in the spirit of excellence. The books that I do, I want the best looking covers. You know what I mean? If I have a conference, I want the conference to be, you know what I mean? Like everything stemmed back from just kind of learning at the high school, and then even um, one of our former pastors that passed away, Dr. Richard Burris, right? His thing was about excellence. Everything he did was about excellence. You know what I mean? Not only at the church, his own business, he had books, real estate. You know what I mean? Like everything he did, I saw.
Mhm.
Foundation started with my principal in high school, and then other, like I said, men throughout my life. You know, I said my dad only being they drop out in the eighth grade, but going to be a supervisor uh, uh, at Washington University, which is here in St. Louis, kind of like the Harvard of the Midwest, right? Great academic, cost 50,000 a year to go. You know what I mean? Him being in the eighth grade and making it to the supervisory over janitorial, excellent. You know what I mean? So I've seen it throughout my life, and I just kind of pattern myself after what I've seen other people's do. You know, a lot of friends that I have that's excellent in, in their fields. I try to model those things, and you know, what I mean, making sure anything I do is done with, with excellence. And like you said, being black American male, a lot of stigmas and stereotypes when you come to certain things or whatever. So I just try to change the narrative, the culture, you know what I mean, and just kind of show. I've been in, like I said, different rooms and stuff like that or whatever. I don't do code switching. I be authentic who I am. You know what I mean? So I have a humorous side. You know what I mean? You can get hood or Harvard. You know what I mean? So one. You know what I mean? So but for me, it's all about doing things with the spirit of excellence.
So, why are Coach Perry, Virgil King, and your father so influential in your understanding of Black history?
Yeah, three black men. First starts at home. So one book I wrote, "Man Up, Hill Up, Show Up," right? It just took me back to just the foundation of the man that I had in my house, right? So uh, hard worker, like I said, he probably worked two jobs for about 28 years, right? became a supervisor, dropping out in the 8th grade. You know what I mean? Raising a family. You know what I mean? My mom never had to work. You know what I mean? So like a housewife in that sense or whatever. So it was like that was the first foundation. And I went from that outside of the house. Uh, those coaches from Little League, Victor, Mr. City, like I said, Coach Perry, Coach Walls, um, and then even like I said in college, David Dumois' brother, David Dumois was my secondary coach at the college that I played for. So you had different people, Tony Gibbert, John Mumford, you know what I mean? So we had all these coaches that laid that foundation for me to see that excellent point Virgil King that I talked about. Like I said, he was a firm principal, did not play, you know what I'm saying? But he was also a person that wanted you to succeed, wanted you to learn your history, wanted you to be successful. And all of them, I think, it was about, you know, you go out in the world and you're a representation of us. You don't go out as an ambassador. An ambassador, like I said, is going to represent. You know what I mean? From that foundation, Dr. Richard Burris. You know what I mean? I can go and name a lot of me. You know what I mean? Coach Sean Morris, coach, business owner, um, Coach Day. You know what I mean? Excellent coach, was similar to my high school coach with his philosophy of X and O's or whatever. High school coach, like I said, won state titles, and I ended up as a coach myself winning state titles. Right. So those foundations for me of a lot of those men, you know what I mean, is kind of where I'm at, where I'm here today. You know what I mean? Um, Along with, you know, like I said, my faith in Christ. You know what I mean? My parents, like I said, trained us up since we was young. You know what I mean? With that foundation is always first. But then, like I said, every mentor, coach, dad, uh, those foundations, um, like I said, are also greatly important. I think in a lot of not only a lot of young men, but definitely know in my life.
Final question. What legacy do you hope to leave behind?
I just want to leave a legacy said, if you came to my funeral, all I want to leave is he was a great. That's it. He was a great person that would help anybody. It don't really matter. That's the only legacy I want to leave. That he was someone that helped anybody, no matter who you were. You know what I mean? Whether it was friends, family, co-workers, students, student athlete, youth, uh, Charles King podcast. Want to help anybody, and that's the only legacy I want to leave.
So, in closing, do you can you please leave some words of wisdom and encouragement for our audience? Tell them how they can connect with you via social media, their websites, or links to your books that you want them to know about. Could you please tell them about that?
Yes, like I said, first of all, I'd like to thank Charles King for, like I said, reaching out. We had a communication, through LinkedIn, and then we ended up, speaking with each other, via phone. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to be on your platform today, and just encouraging words for anybody. For me, is always, like I said, keep Christ first, because anything that you do, like I said, connected with that is almost like with a marriage. Me and my wife, we connected with Christ, but it's a 3/4 chord, and that 3/4 chord not easy to be broken. So that's the foundation that I have. Whether you, like I said, believe in Christ, religious or not, that's my foundation that I always leave with people, because I can't do anything without, what I mean, first Christ. I couldn't even wake up this morning, couldn't breathe, couldn't, meet you, Mr. King, and be on your podcast without that. Second thing I would say, always be a dreamer. And if you stop dreaming, dream another dream. because that's important. And like I said, you're gonna have different tests, trials throughout your life, but like I said, making sure you stay focused on the goal at hand. Another thing I learned in life is that you have to see it from the end. So before I wrote any book, I saw it already being published before I even started the outline. So I started writing. Anything that you do, before I started coaching, wasn't a goal, but I saw being successful as a coach at the end, winning 11 Super Bowl, 2 state titles, going to be able to coach at the high school level because of the goal that I set. So I always see it from the end, keep dreaming, and make sure always the last thing, help.
Well, I want to thank you for being here on the show, and I hope that I'll be reached back out to you, because I definitely would love to have you back on the show, because there's some things that I didn't get a chance to get to, but I definitely love to have a more in-depth conversation there about what we were talking about, the school system.
Yes, sir.
I definitely
do
love to
that.
have you back.
Yes, sir.
And for those of you that were watching or are watching on the YouTube channel, I want to thank you all for watching. If you have not yet subscribed, I would ask if you would please subscribe to the channel, get all the notifications to where, once we go live, you'll be able to catch the shows live, but also you'll be able to go back and watch all of the previous recorded content that's as informative as you'll ever get. And you'll get to see all of that Black excellence that's there, that's giving out this knowledge to help us to build our communities the way they should be built. For those of you that are still watching, again, I want you to know that when just listening to what Dr. Felton had to say, Dr. Felton just gave us a masterclass on what it is to reach back into your community, to contribute, and to make it as best as possible. When you can go back to where it all started, and you can put your roots in the ground, your boots on the ground, and you get into that grind and you make it work, and you got young soldiers that are listening to you, that you're mentoring to help to make their lives better, that's where it starts. Because if you don't have that foundation, and if there is something that is missing, you need to find that one person that can more than just mentor, but to help to put you on the right course to make sure you get to that point and where you're trying to get to. These are the things that Dr. Felton's doing right now, especially going back into the school system. Going back into the school system where we need to see more people, more men, Black men that look just like him, that's actually indicating the difference today. These kids need to see people that look just like Dr. Felton to make their school experiences not just better, but life-changing. So for all of you that are watching and gotten some understanding here from this message, please, if you need to reach out and ask questions, you can either reach out to Dr. Felton. He gave you his contact information. You can reach out to the show here, because I'm definitely here as a resource, but we're here to do community building. And I want to thank you all for watching this show, because as we continue, American Black and White is only going to go forward. So get used to seeing us for some years going down the line, because we ain't going nowhere. And we're going to always be here to do that one thing, to amplify the voices of those that are making differences in all of these communities around this country. So I want to thank you all for watching. It was another great show, and we will see you guys again tomorrow night, same time, same channels, plural. And I hope you all will be here to watch as we are continuing to color conversations on America's canvas. Thank you again, Dr. Felton, and I'll definitely be reaching out to you because we definitely need to have you back on the show.